And hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show. And we have a bit of a special treat, because while not directly, kind of directly. Well, it's not often we talk about spin-offs of video games today, and so my main guest is Ian Flynn, one of the writers of the Sonic the Hedgehog comics, both past and present.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello. So, let's see. Before we start the introduction proper, we thought we could play, a favorite game of mine called Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Dark Souls. And how it works
Okay.
is, because if there's one thing that Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dark Souls have in common, it's that they both have characters that with names that sound like a dictionary is melting. So how it works, Ian, is I will give you three names, and you're going to tell me if they are either a boss from Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Elden Ring or a Yu-Gi-Oh card.
You okay? I'm not familiar with either series, so I'm going in blind.
That is in no way a hindrance. Believe me, plenty of people have gotten through this just by guessing. So let's see. We will start off with um, Loretta, Knight of the Halig Tree, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
Uh, Dark Souls?
Correct, is a boss from Elden Ring, which is basically Dark Souls but more.
Well, there's trees in that. I knew that much.
Yep, and let's see. Next, Zushin, the Sleeping Giant, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
Gonna guess Yu-Gi-Oh?
That is correct.
Hey!
And the last one, before we get to the actual reason why you are here, let's see. Let's see. Godric the Grafted, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
I am like 90% sure I saw that name while watching an Elden Ring playthrough, so I'm gonna say Elden Ring.
That is correct. You are three for three, sir.
Victory is mine.
So enough with that, out of left field. Now we can get to the interview proper. So, Ian, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself for my 10 of viewer.
I'm Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, a freelance writer who's worked on a number of licenses through a number of media, be it comic books, animation, streaming stuff, video games, cookbooks. Technically, I got one under my belt.
Huh.
Basically, if you throw money at me, I will write things for you. And I've worked on franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog, Mega Man, Ninja Turtles, My Little Pony, Transformers, Minecraft, a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay. And Ian, how did you first discover video games?
First video games I can remember were on my dad's Atari 2500, and I believe it was an Apple II. What was it that Rogue initially ran on? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But those were my first exposures to video games, and then sometime after that, one day he came home with a Genesis that was packaged with Sonic 2, and that's all she wrote. I was hooked from then on.
Okay, and I know you kind of answered this already, but what would you say is your favorite game and or games growing up?
Sonic games, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I'm addicted to those, but my brother and I played X-Men 2 like almost non-stop all the time. trying to remember it all. The old Jurassic Park game on the Genesis, almost exclusively as a raptor though, because why would you play as some human when you can play as a cool dinosaur?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, After that, the next console was the Dreamcast, and obviously Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, but loved me some Skies of Arcadia. Loved the original Power Stone, and if we cover like every single game over every console, we're going to be here all day. But I love a little bit of everything.
Okay. And what would you say is your favorite game and or games now?
Right now, the one that's getting my attention when I have time is Genshin Impact,
Mm-hmm.
and I promise you, this is not a plug. Sonic Forces Speed Battle on the phone. It's a fun little thing that I do. I try to check in every day. But right now, unfortunately, I don't have enough time
Mm-hmm.
to sit down and play much of anything anymore.
All right then. And now we can get to the real meat and potatoes or the real chili dog of the interview. So just for clarification, Ian, I am not a writer by trade. I've never written in the sort of fields you have at all. So explain it to me as you would a child. Like, you've written for all manners of properties, but we'll be focusing on the Sonic comics today. So what exactly, like as someone who does not know how like that sort of job works in like the day to day, what does your job as a writer for the Sonic IDW comics entail?
Well, when I was lead writer, uh, basically what I would do is pitch what we would do for the year or a little longer. What is the overarching story for the foreseeable future?
Mm-hmm.
And that would go to editorial for their review, and then once they approved that and we revised it so everyone was happy, that would go to Sega for their approval, and they would say we like the direction of that, we don't like the direction of that, we are fine with this character, we don't want that character, etc., etc. They'd give their input, we'd revise and go back and forth with that. And then once those springboards were approved, I would move on to the individual issues for breakdowns. So that's a page by page synopsis of what each issue would have. So
Okay.
page one, this happens. Page two, that happens. And we keep it to about a sentence a page because it's a lot easier to revise sentences rather than fully constructed pages. Very easy to move around thoughts when it's just a line at a time.
Mm-hmm.
That goes to editor, that goes to Sega, and then once all that's approved, then we go on to the actual script, which is what I liken to the blueprint. These are the directions for the art team to follow to construct the actual comic itself. And that needs to be a balance of descriptive, but also being concise. We don't want someone to be spending a day reading a panel description, but we also don't want them to have completely no idea what is going on. They need to have as they need to have as much direction as needed so that they can complete the page while still giving them some creative freedom. So it would be like page one, panel one. The panel is this size, it is this setting, it has these characters doing this action, saying this. Panel two. And you go on through that panel by panel, page by page. That goes to the editor for review and revision. Then that goes on to Sega for their review and any revision that they want from there. And I did that from, oh shoot, what years were that? I don't remember, but we'll say Sonic number one to Sonic 32, and then Evan Stanley took over as lead writer, and from there, whenever I would get to contribute, it would be okay. What did Evan do, and what can I do that fits within her framework for the series,
Mm-hmm.
and is good with the editors and Sega and such and such. I've gotten to do a few classic Sonic stories over the years: the Tails anniversary, Amy anniversary, the upcoming Knuckles anniversary, the four-part Fang miniseries we did, and those were specifically requested either IDW or by Sega through IDW. It varied each to each, but basically it's they come to me and say, "This is the premise. We want a story that focuses on classic tales. Do that." And so I come up with something. Say, would you want to do this option? Would you want to do this option? We could do option C, and that gets run by Sega, and they say, we like this. You can't use that. We would prefer this, and then go on to the springboard and follow the same dance steps that I just described.
Okay. And Ian, how did you come to be a writer for the Sonic the Hedgehog comics, both the current ones, both the current like IDW era, and back in the day when good old Archie Bunker had the reins?
Uh, I got started off in the absolute wrong way, which was unsolicited application. Don't do that, kids. That is the wrong way to go about it. And I just happened to catch a bit of a lucky break. But I was in university pursuing my English degree. I figured I like to write. I like the Sonic comic. I want to write for the Sonic comic. How hard can it be to break into the industry? So I spent all university drafting up applications, putting together sample scripts, contacting the editor as best I could. And just around graduation, there was a change in editors, and the new editor, Mike Pellerito, was very interested in getting new talent on board. And he just happened to see my application and said, "All right, kid, you ain't bad. Let me show you how it's done." And he showed me how to format a script and kind of taught me how to approach writing for comics specifically rather than prose. And from there, I did a lot of kind of background information gathering and organization. Pitched a few things here and there when I could, and in short order was made lead writer of the Archie Sonic books, starting with number 160. And I got to write an incredible amount of material for that. Worked with a ton of fantastic artists. Went through 3 editors. They kept leaving, but I stayed on. And that went on until Sega took the license from. Let me rephrase that. Sega ended their business relationship with Archie Comics and then uh, struck up a licensing deal with IDW Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And the editors there wanted a fresh take on the series, but there was a number of folks who had within Sega and around the industry who said, "Look, if you want to hit the ground running with this, there is a guy who knows his stuff and is fast and reliable. You might as well ring up Ian Flynn." And I'm so very thankful they did,
Mm-hmm.
because they said, "Do you want to keep working on Sonic?" And I said, "Yes, please. I like being able to pay my bills." And so we did.
Okay. And what issue of like back in the Archie days of like the Sonic comics did you like officially like join the team?
Technically speaking, I did. I believe it was uncredited. A bit of revision work with number 159, but the first Archie Sonic issue that was published under my name was number 160.
Yeah. See, I I remember back at the local bookstore that had Sonic comics and a bunch of other things on the little like turning rack, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like Sonic the Hedgehog comic. The first I didn't start buying them until issue 181, but I remember like the landmark of like 175 when Eggman just like invaded Knothole and his far and up until he told Sonic that they were all alive, like disintegrated everyone, and like just like beat Sonic into a bunch of Blueford beef jerky, and I'm like, oh damn. And and when I actually started like buying them properly, it was in 181, which was like when Knuckles became Enerjack, and I was like, what? Why is Knuckles evil? And then I started buying them, and I did not stop until like as you said, the license ran out.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Yeah, I'm hot diggity darn. And like I was just like thrilled to bits when I saw like Sonic IDW #1 and like a few years ago at my local comic book store, and I've been buying those ever since and have literally every issue and all like the spin-off, all like the currently released spin-offs.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, like as you said, like Sonic IDW is a fresh take taking place, I think, like slightly after like the Sonic Forces game.
Yep.
And aside from the fact that fresh take and all that with slightly new setting and new characters, like as someone who's been with Sonic comics for a fair bit and the Sonic IDW for another fair bit, what would you say? What is like, I don't know, like the main difference between the Sonic IDW and the Archie run?
The Archie Sonic comics were very much a product of their time.
Mm-hmm.
They were born during a period where global consistency with an IP just wasn't a thing, really. You had your North American market, you had your Japanese market, and never the two shall mix type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an amalgamation of the cartoons that were airing at the time and the writers' original ideas. And as the games progressed, the new content that came from them. So it really was just a patchwork quilt of all sorts of different ideas and interpretations of Sonic. And even when Sonic as a brand was consolidated in 1999, the comic endured kind of as just grandfathered in these very unique circumstances and continue to evolve in ways that were just really sometimes at odds with the game material, but also following its own course. So it was this delightful Frankenstein's monster creature. It was unique. I don't know if we'll ever see anything like it again, and I loved it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was an honor and a privilege to be able to be part of that legacy, to pick up the baton and continue that version of events and just see it through in its own weird, wacky way. But it was very decidedly Archie Sonic. It was its own special thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we had to do a reboot for the narrative, it was uniquely Archie Sonic. IDW Sonic is a branch of the main Sonic series. It begins after Sonic Forces and is currently filling in the gap between that and Sonic Frontiers. Eventually, I'm sure it will move on to incorporate stuff like Frontiers and Dream Team and whatever comes after. But anything that is added with IDW Sonic is part of the greater whole. It's not a weird side brand, it is part of the greater whole.
Okay. And like as you have stated earlier, like you and your team write material, send it to the editors send it to Sega, and like just through my own research, because like the Sonic IDW comics are currently one of my several hyperfixations. Um, I know that there are certain things you can, like just due to like I don't just the rules of this particular rodeo. Certain things you can do with like the characters and settings, and certain things you can't do. And have you like either at the beginning, the middle, or the present, you and the team you've worked with like found any restriction like some things that other like comic book writers would consider like restrictions about the IDW comics that you were able to take and like turn it into a surprising like spring of creative opportunities.
Nothing immediately springs to mind with IDW's run,
Mm-hmm.
in large part because I learned so much at my time with Archie that I kind of learned what would fly and what wouldn't fly.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something new to learn. Uh, there's always going to be something where the licensor has some vision or oversight or guidelines that you must abide by that they hadn't considered before you broach the subject, or you haven't run into because the narrative didn't go particularly that way. I wouldn't say it's any different than any other license I've worked with, and in some ways is less than restrictive than some,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing that with IDW Sonic specifically, I can't immediately think of an instance where we got a note back. It's like, okay, we have to really pivot and think of a creative solution to it. Because usually we try to address all the concerns very early on in development so we're not caught off guard during production. But I can't speak for everybody because we're a very decentralized group of folks. We're all freelancers,
Mm-hmm.
all over the United States, North America, the world, sending things in electronically. So I'm sure everybody else has all sorts of stories they could tell.
Okay. And like I'm just bringing this up because like one of my favorite story arcs of the IDW Sonic comics so far. I mean, for all I know, something's on the horizon that's just gonna knock my socks off. Is like the Zombots arc, and like this is this is like I don't know. This like the Sonic comics aren't known for being like gory or bloody, but it is still like it goes like pretty dark. Like it reminds me of like how I don't know some people like think like Power Rangers is just like just a kid thing, and then like the writers show like they can get like real dark real quick with something like that. So like for the Zombot arc, like is there any like did you or any of the other writers like get ideas or inspiration from any sort of other zombie properties, or did you just like pull it from like the sort of collective consciousness of like zombies being a part of like entertainment for many decades?
I'd say more collective consciousness type of thing because I honestly don't really like horror.
Mm-hmm.
I am a squeamish individual. I don't like the spooky. I don't like the gory. I don't like scary stuff. But it was an old idea that had been kind of planted in my head, and it's like, well, how would I make that work? And really, the core of it, and arguably of any kind of horror story, I imagine, would be the sense of helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you struggle against it or run from it or try to reason with it or work around it, that sense of inevitability and doom that puts the characters in peril. And there has to be some form of consequence. So when you have these characters that you've known for so long and have not been harmed in any notable sort of way for 30 years, suddenly, oops, they got turned into a zombot. It's like, oh, wait, there's consequences. Nothing is sacred. The sense of comfort you have entering into the narrative of, oh, it'll be okay. It's like, no, maybe it won't be okay. And that itself is kind of fun in a
Mm-hmm.
sick, twisted sort of way. But what can I say? It left an impact on us.
I've made a like it also like went went on for a fair number of issues. Like I like when like the storyline was still like fresh, I thought it was just gonna be like bing bang boom, but I'm like, oh, this is getting bad. Oh, it's getting worse. Oh, we got best girl Whisper suffering from like PTSD because she lost another friend, and was unable to do anything about it. Oh no, the child Cream is having like the light and wonder drained out of her soul because of all the stuff she just had to witness. Like, oh dear. like oh goodness. Like I was surprised. Like And also when it really started to get to Sonic, like him having to like as far as he know like say goodbye to like a bunch of these characters, like oh goodness. Like whatever you and the rest of the team did to make it like hit me and the rest of the audience like, you know, a bag of bricks, it worked.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Uh, and I mean, Sonic IDW comes with, you know, many wonderful new characters created specifically for this run of the comics. And, uh, like, I mean, with, like, the pre existing characters Sonic, Blaze, Shadow, Eggman, Orbot, Cubot, love those, Bulk and Skull, little jerks. There's, like, you know, a spring, like, something to go off of, but how did you like come up with like some of the characters like, you know, best girl Tangle, best girl Whisper, that friggin' platypus who I wish I could punch. Like like what was the process for you to like come up with these characters and turn them from just like ideas to like an integral part of the overall story?
Well, one part is that they were inspired in some shape or form by the games.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tangle was inspired by the grappling hook mechanic out of Forces. Whisper was inspired by the Wispons out of Forces. How do you take those core ideas and use them as a character ability in a game? How would these characters make sense in a Sonic game?
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, what are some character types that we don't see in the larger group? What niches haven't been filled? You know, Amy's character was still kind of finding her present state. Rouge is not necessarily a friend. Cream is the young protege at best, so we didn't really have someone who was just getting there and have a fun adventure next to Sonic, no strings attached, very light fare.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where Tangle came from. It's like, let's have just a fun scrapper character. Um, and then you have Whisper, who is the exact other end of the spectrum, is who is someone who is not as bold and lively and outgoing and adventurous as everyone else, but is rather very reserved and restrained and acts as a foil to all these other very bombastic characters. That's where Whisper came from. And finding those unexplored niches and exploring how they interact with those other characters and what dynamics spin out from that com- creates compelling character interaction.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just Tangle and Whisper, that delightful duo. I mean, just like the I remember like Jenny Ortega said in like some of the press release for like the first season of the Wednesday Netflix show, like her favorite like character dynamic is Dark, Stormcloud, and Sunshine, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what we have with Tangle and Whisper, and it's funny every time. Like Tangle is this like loud hyperactive friend who very much reminds me of Luce from the Owl House, and like Whisper like is almost like, at least initially, I mean she does grow as like the issues progress, reminds me of like the character of Comey from Comey Can't Communicate, at least initially. I mean slightly more outgoing, but like a lot of the reservedness is there. Yeah. Say, yeah, and Ian, who has been your favorite character, whether pre-existing or an original to the IDW run? Who's been your favorite character to write for thus far?
Dr. Eggman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I try to find something fun with everybody. I certainly have my favorites, but Eggman is just so delightfully
Yeah,
You get to say so many horrible things,
I
get away with it.
I remember um back in the Archie run, like at the end of like the Iron Queen saga, when like he ends up like rescuing, I'm terrible with names, Leonda, one of the Dark Legion, and is like, hey, and like she like literally just like rebuilds her, which from like being like blown into chunks, and just like give her new cybernetics and make them even better than ever, and then she's like, you literally have like committed mass murder, like borderline genocide on our people. You've like ruined the world. Why the ever loving crap are you like actually like doing this? Why did you save me and make me so much better? And then Eggman straight, and this is like one of my favorite of his monologues from the Archie run, and he's like, it's all because of the game. Like, I know you and all my other like generals hate me, but you want to you want to like betray me and take over, so you're going to work as damn hard as possible to make sure that when you do take over, you'll have that much better of an empire to rule. And and he actually gets her to like agree with it and like play along. Like
Mm-hmm.
uh, but my absolute favorite from like the Archie run is during like the mini series when he goes after Snivy, and it shows that unless you're like Sonic the Hedgehog or friends, like he can like steamroll over pretty much anyone. And I just love, like, again, this like these comics are about as like unbloody and ungory as you can like pretty much get. But like at the end of the series, he has Snivy like trapped in like, I don't know, like an egg crate, let's call it, and be like, you brought your absolute best A game and I still won, and no one knows you're trapped in this like little storage unit inside of this like warehouse part of my ship, and no one's going to know for the rest of your life. And he's like, game over, Snivy. Thanks for playing. Like I 100% agree and see like why Eggman would be like your favorite character to write for. Like, oh goodness. Like, oh, that was like one of my favorites. And yeah, and the Sonic IDW comics have also have like their own mini series, like my favorite duo, Tangle and Whisper, were like the first to get like their own series. Like, is like creating like a series like with Tangle and Whisper, or like the bad guys arc with like the platypus that I just, again, I want to punch his beak to where it like spins around like Daffy's in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Like, is creating like a sort of like a spin-off or like a branching storyline, is that like the same process as writing for like a mainline issue?
More or less. Like with Tangle and Whisper, that was editorial
Mm-hmm.
requested. I would never have expected us to get a miniseries that early in the title's life, let alone with
uh
original spin-off characters. That's still crazy to me.
and I'm
Um,
very appreciative.
oh, it's great fun. And with Bad Guys, that was something I wanted to do specifically to accentuate the story that I had going on elsewhere. So um, that one I pitched to see if we could do it, and thankfully it landed. But otherwise, it is the same general process. It's just making sure that it syncs up with the release schedule of the main book. It doesn't, reveal anything too early, or doesn't drag anything down, or doesn't contradict anything else that's going on.
Okay. And like a moment that caught me like quite by surprise when I read it, and that like when Starline tries to like show up Eggman and prove that he's like the new kid on the block, he like loses badly, the most badly you can lose at something, I would say, and like then he just dies. Like, was when Dr. Starline was first introduced as a character, was the idea of him being like killed off just like was that always in the works, or like as the storyline progressed to be like that is the direction we should go in?
I don't know if that was always there from the very, very beginning, but it came into play very early on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because Starline is a cautionary tale that if you aspire to do bad things, if you hook yourself up to people who are just bad people, bad influences that hurt others and take advantage of others, it's not going to end well for you. That is not a bandwagon that you want to be part of. So, for all his aspirations, it was meant to be, he aspires to do evil and he will have his comeuppance. We can't really do that to Eggman. He's the villain of the franchise. He has to endure. But Starline is not as restricted, and so we were able to have a full arc for him.
Like I was very surprised. I mean, I know like certain things you can and can't do, but just it was one. It was surprised to like see like, I mean, I mean Sonic, the Sonic comics and the Archie run have killed off characters before, but I kind of didn't expect it. Like, I mean, I know it was like in like issue like 50 or 51 at the time, but I thought it wasn't going to be until like I don't know, slightly later into like the series to like they would actually do that, and that took me by surprise. And like I was just really taken by surprise that Sonic's only reaction to when he like finds out that Starline is actually dead for realsies is like big oof. Like Sonic's a pretty decent guy, but like just seeing just how much he does not care that Starline like died like a shell of his former self. Like that was very surprising, but in a very good way. And yeah, like you've said that your favorite character to write for is Eggman, but like I mean, who can tell with the future? It's always changing. Like the next time you get to put up your writing dukes, like who's another character that you're just like itching to like write for at the next available opportunity?
Oh, Omega is always delightful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it is true.
He's a simple creature, but so am I.
Uh, like I'm imagining in a different world, if he didn't already have like the people who voiced him, he'd be like, I'm imagining him voiced as like Robert Axelford, the man who like voiced Lord Zed in Power Rangers, just because like I mean, much like Eggman, he is like a friggin' goofball, but when he wants to be an evil goofball, he can be an evil goofball. But that's just my imagining. And yeah, and I know your favorite character to write for is Eggman, but of the IDW run so far, what has been your like favorite moment? A moment that like when someone asks you like about that time, about your time with IDW, you'll point at it and be like, that is why I did it. Like that's my favorite moment.
I don't know about favorite. It feels kind of dark to call this my favorite, but I think one of the most memorable moments
Mm-hmm.
was Tangle's sacrifice.
Oh, oh, I know.
Because
Oh.
I remember this was very early on in the run. I was at a show in California and I was sitting down with the editors, and things were going well, and they asked, what do you want to do for the next arc? And so I cold pitched the Metal Virus saga. Not all the details, but the general idea. But the one scene I had very vivid in my head was Tangle's sacrifice. I knew exactly how I wanted that to play out. And as I was telling this story off the cuff, partway through, I realized that all the other conversations around the dinner table had stopped and everybody was listening to this.
Oh, goodness.
Like, I had hooked people who didn't even know what we were talking about. And I figured, okay, this is good. I got those people. I can get everybody with this. And, we got to that moment in the book, in the actual stories, and I remember getting a little misty-eyed writing it. It's like, this is tragic. And if it's affecting me, I'm hoping it's going to affect everyone else. And it did. So there's a number of fantastic moments. I'm just happy to be included again, to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to be part of this franchise that I love for so long. But of all the moments in like my main run, that might be one of the most impactful.
Yep, I remember that vividly, like her just trying to hold off the hordes, and like the metal virus is slowly creeping up on her until she just stops mid punch, and just like her eyes are just like blood red. My other, like, again, I mean, much like you said with that, like, maybe not favorite, but something that like was seared into my brain was just that, like, when Sonic like told everyone like what happened to Tangle, and then just Whisper lost it. Like, I mean, that was like the most intense like facial expression. Like, that was genuine. Like, I was genuinely like scared a bit when I saw it for the first time, because like she was like dangerously close to going like absolutely like feral. Like, we said, like, I mean, it's almost like a little bit of like the inherent cartooniness of her like design just went away, and like her snout looked a bit more like an actual wolf. She like opened up her eyes and we could like see her, and her teeth just looked extra sharp. And then at the end, she's got her head on like Cream's lap, and she's just like crying, just like borderline broken. Like, I oh goodness, that got me all right.
Yeah, Adam went hard on that one.
Yeah. I mean, that, and pretty much all of the like emotionally intense moments with other best girl Surge, that that got me right here, right in the old ticker. Oh goodness. And now we move on to the final question of this little get together. Ian, in your opinion, is video games?
Yes,
You
absolutely.
you heard it here first, everyone. And with that, we can start to wrap up this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I would like to thank Ian Flynn. Like, I've been doing this show for quite some time, and like, even though this is not the first time I've been able to speak with like a writer whose like work I am familiar with, like, it's still like, Ian, I've been reading the Sonic comics since like high school, and now I am 32. So good golly gosh, like, talking, like, if I may, boost your ego. I hope you don't mind. Like, I've been like the Sonic comics, like Archie and IDW. It's like, I mean, just the comics I am like most invested in. Like, it was the first. It was like one of the Sonic Archie comics were like the first comics I read when I was like able to figure out like, oh, this is how this is how comics are able to like create like episodic like issue by issue storylines and like an overarching plot, like. And still reading them and enjoying them to this day. So thank you, and like, any of your past or present, like, Sonic writing colleagues are listening to this, thank you too.
And thank you for reading and supporting the books.
You betcha. And if any of you out there want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/thepumpkincoptercast, where for just $1 a month you can go into the question tier, which would allow you to submit questions for me to use in future interviews. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and just all that good stuff. If you see this posted on this, if you see a link to this video posted on the social media, be sure to like retweet it and all that. And Ian, before we sign off, is there anything that you have worked on, are working on, or will work on that you would like to shamelessly plug?
There's so much, and honestly, it's hard to keep track of what's been formally announced and what hasn't. So the easiest way to track down what I'm working on and what is coming out and what has come out is my personal website, bumbleking.com. That has links to my portfolio, to my various web stores where you can get signed comics. You can also find links to my original series, Drogoon and The Nine Lives of Klaus McGee. You'll also find links to the Bumblecast, which is my own podcast where we do Q&A and we basically do this. We answer questions, usually about Sonic, 3 times a week. So head over there too. That's bumblecast.com.
You heard it here first, everyone. So, thank you again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, everyone, as I say at the end of every episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast, have a gourd day, everyone.
A gourd day. I see what you did there.
Bye-bye.